What's going on, guys? Matty G back here with you on Football with Flags. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, today's video is all about penalties and shootouts when it comes to the 2024 Euros and some information you need to know before we see any potential spot kicks or shootouts in the knockout stages. So sit back and join us while we take you through this quick one. Couple of interesting stats for you. The first being only 2 times have we seen 4 different shootouts during a Euro competition. The first being in 1996. Meanwhile, the 2020 edition also featured 4 shootouts. Only 2 players ever have gone to 3 different penalty shootouts in their international careers during the Euros. The first being Fabian Schär of Switzerland, and the second being Leonardo Bonucci of Italy. Only 15 teams have ever been to a penalty shootout in Euro competition. 14 of those teams made the field this time around. The only one that did not is Sweden. And last but not least, 3 different goalkeepers have gone through 3 different shootouts over their Euro careers. The first being Edwin van der Sar of Netherlands, the second being Gianluigi Buffon of Italy, and Switzerland's very own Jan Sommer. Taking a look back at the 2020 edition, there were 16 different penalties given throughout the tournament, but only 9 of the 16 were converted. It was one of the worst percentage rates we've seen in decades during the Euros. Now, as you can see on the screen there, 5 of the 9 were converted to the left-hand side, which is an interesting point when we talk about something later on in the video. Ronaldo led the way with 3 himself. 2 were down the middle and 2 to the right, but it will be interesting to see if we have a better conversion rate or worse, depending on how many penalties we get and how many we see converted, whether players are able to step up to the spot and finish their opportunities, or if they miss it wide, or if the goalkeepers are able to get in their heads and make some great saves. Couple of things to remember if we see any penalty shootouts during this tournament. If you take a look back at 2020 and all the shots taken during shootouts in that edition, if you went middle to top on the left or right hand side, you were usually converting those chances. Only 1 was missed during the entire tournament. But if you went bottom left or bottom right, those chances significantly dwindle. Now, only 6 for 10 on the left hand side, 4 for 9 on the right. The left also included 2 that hit off the post, as well as 2 that were skied over the crossbar on the left-hand side. Now, granted, depending on the information the goalkeeper has, how low he sits, the anticipation he might have, if he knows more about that certain player, I think if they can get a paw out to it, even though it's low, those chances are difficult to score, especially considering the extension a goalkeeper can get without having to reach too high up into a corner. But very interesting to at least note in case we do see any shootouts during this tournament. Keep in mind as well, out of the 4 that we saw in 2020, the team that went first in all of those shootouts were the team that would go on to win. Now, while it would be fun to sit here and analyze who we think the 5 are going to be to step up and take penalties, obviously we have no idea at this point who or even which teams are going to potentially get into these shootout opportunities down the road. So to at least simplify things, we're going to take a look, as you can see on the screen, who we think the top choice will be for every side to take a penalty if they get it in the tournament. For Spain, Ferran Torres, I definitely think Rodri could go there as well. For Germany, I really like Ilkay Gundogan. Szoboszlai for Hungary, John McGinn for Scotland, even though I would like Scott McTominay or some others to take that as well, potentially. For Switzerland, I know Rodriguez usually takes those, but I really like Shaqiri in that role. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes, I think, would be the option for Portugal if Ronaldo is not on the field. But again, I think they have some other players that could step up as well. Patrick Schick for Czech Republic, Lewandowski for Poland, Lukaku for Belgium, even though, again, I think Kevin De Bruyne could certainly step in and take that, as well as Yannick Carrasco. Modric for Croatia, in my opinion, even though, again, we know some other players can take on that role as well. Romania have had Stancu take a couple penalties. I believe he converted a few in the 2016 tournament, so I really like him, even though I think they might potentially use some other players as well. For France, Griezmann is always a great choice, but considering what Mbappe's been able to do and the pressure he's been under with some of these penalties as of late, I would definitely take Kylian. Mitrovic for Serbia, Arnautovic for Austria, England, obviously Kane. I think, again, you look at Saka, Foden, plenty others that could step up and take a penalty. Jude Bellingham, but I really like Kane in that role. Cody Gakpo and Virgil van Dijk could certainly step up for Netherlands, but I really like Memphis Depay there. Jorginho, I think, should be the one to take him for Italy, although I think he needs to adjust that little, crow hop or jump he makes with some of his penalties, maybe kind of catch the goalkeeper off guard. I know obviously he really likes to use it and he converts very well with it, but would like to consider, him maybe to try and do something else if he does take these for Italy. For Ukraine, I really like Yaramchuk, even though Yarmolenko could step up. I think Zinchenko as well there. And for Denmark, certainly Christian Eriksen, even though Poulsen and some others obviously could take on that role as well. Now, one more thing we wanted to show before we end this video was the record of each of these 24 teams in penalty shootouts over the last 8 years. Now, some of these nations have not had any penalty shootouts in that time. And to be quite honest, based off what I looked at, I'm not sure if they've had any penalty shootouts in the history of their federation. But for those that have in the last 8 years, Croatia leads the way in 4-1. I believe the only one that they've lost was to Spain last year in the Nations League final. Scotland, interestingly enough, are 2-0. I believe both of theirs came from European qualifiers recently. And Switzerland also had 4 under their belt, but they're only 1-3 during that time. Spain, along with Croatia, also have 5 in the last 8 years. And again, one thing to remember is that while it's been 8 years, doesn't necessarily mean the same players are going to be involved or that we're going to see, the same 5 or anything like that take penalties if these teams do get into these situations. But it's interesting to point out just to see how federations have handled these over the years, how they analyze it, how they prepare for it, and what we could potentially see from these teams based off their records if we do see them in shootouts during the tournament. Well, guys, as always, thanks again so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And you can take a look back at our Euro predictions if you haven't already seen that. We'll put the link up here in the video. And let us know down in the comments as well where you would take a penalty if you had the opportunity to put one on frame, along with which 2 sides would you love to see take on each other in a shootout during the tournament. Guys, as always, really appreciate your support. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.